So just to reiterate, laying on our backs, just for a minute or two really, and just noticing how the body relaxes itself. Sometimes it takes a little time to get familiar with your surroundings and with what we're doing, yoga, before we feel hopefully more and more relaxed. And eventually it becomes a sort of signal, just even being in the Brighton Buddhist Center, immediately just to relax, to let go. But of course, sometimes, perhaps instead of that immediate relaxation, also we have a lot of thoughts. That can also happen. And there's a very, very simple attitude that yoga takes towards thoughts, lots and lots of thoughts. It's just to allow them without being too contrived. The image of clouds passing through a blue sky, the clouds are the thought, the blue sky is the mind. So the sort of foundation of ourselves is not seen to be the clouds. They're more ephemeral. They come and go. We don't attach to them. We allow them to be there. We don't need to do anything about them. But at the same time, we're not over-focused. We're going to now pop our hands behind our heads, so fingers interlaced. That's a very, very simple thing. So once your hands are behind your head, two things happen straight away. One is the chest broadens, the chest muscles get stretched right into the arms. The other is that the shoulder blades get pressed into the back of the body, particularly the medial shoulder blades, the inner edge of the shoulder blades. So you feel two things at the same time: shoulder blades deep, chest wide. And then a third element to that is breath. All the time, in any moment, there's an invitation to breathe into the moment, to sort of permit the moment, to permit the way things are, or to resist with the breath, to breathe in a sort of shallow way, indicative of uncertainty. So obviously it's the former rather than the latter. We obviously go for welcoming the moment via the breath, via deep breaths. So taking deep, relaxing breaths, and then lifting up your feet when you're ready. So we're going to just lift up our feet with bent knees. So the feet are now off the floor, the knees are bent. We're not activating the front thigh muscles, the quadriceps, at all. If they were active to any extent, it would pull the heels away from the buttocks. So therefore, the heels are not pulled away from the buttocks. They're relatively close. And it's probably worth me emphasizing at this point, although I've sort of indicated it but not emphasized it, that a big part of yoga is letting go. Perhaps even more important than the moving in that it facilitates, than the actions that we take in yoga, letting go of what's holding those actions back, what those sort of stuff that's stored in our nerves and then expresses into our muscles without us even knowing it. Subconscious stuff that we've picked up through our upbringing and the society we live in, and through the assumptions that we've made from conversations and things we've read and so on. Lift your head up when you're ready as well, and you're going to feel now an impression into the deep belly. So again, you can feel belly muscles are activated, and it's, the fundamental understanding is that from the nerves to the muscles, normally there's a bunch of unconscious signals, stuff that's stored in our nerves, assumptions and presumptions, and just stuff that's even stored more deeply in the nerves, like physical habits and breath habits, usually orbiting around a sense of not being sure about something, uncertainty. So when you feel an impression coming from a yoga pose, it challenges what's coming from the nerves and invites what's coming from the nerves to release. So we call it nerve purification. And that purification happens through our consent, through our breath. So we allow the moment or resist it That's the only two things we're ever doing through our breath. Now, if you can keep your head up without any strain on the neck, that's great. And we're going to extend one leg out to about 45 degrees. The skill is to keep a sort of steadiness and aliveness and attentiveness in the deep belly, moment to moment, making sure the back doesn't grip, keeping your attention very, very close to the changing sensations in the deep belly. Retract that leg and extend the other one out in its place. So one back, one forward. Again, there's a very keen sense, we could call it study. We sort of study our experience, not from a point of view of being able to label it, but instead to really know it directly. Like if you dance with someone, you get to know them directly, more directly, rather than just thinking about them. Bend your leg back, head down, feet down. Everyone takes a deep breath. And then 2 or 3 or 4 more deep breaths. It's rather nice in the Brighton Buddhist Center when it's been raining and then the sky clears, you get blue sky, because it's a really good metaphor for the yoga project of cleansing the nerves. The blue sky is open, it's clear. We're not distracted by any clouds. And that happens as a result of not attaching. Not in the weather, I mean, now it's talking about our own experience, not attaching to thoughts, feelings, emotions. And that happens through being generous, through being relaxed, through being spacious. We're not trying to get rid of anything or get anything. We're going to lift our feet up again, just as we did a minute ago. Although this time, we are going to partially activate our quadriceps by pulling the calves away from the thighs. So the feet are as if against a wall that were perpendicular, right angles to the floor. We're going to lift our heads up as well. And without any pulling or yanking on the neck, that's something we can be very free around where our hands are positioned, for example, to help avoid pulling and yanking. We're going to take opposite elbow towards opposite knee, and then vice versa. Opposite elbow to opposite knee. We're going to do that 3 times on each side. Again, not yanking on the neck. The duration on each side is up to you, how long you stay. And finally, when you've done the 3, you'll come back down and you'll rest your feet and you'll take 3 deep breaths with a real focus on the exhale, almost sigh-like actually. So a real sense of release, just as when it's been raining and the sky clears, there's a real sense. I had a real sense coming on my moped this morning. My moped was soaking wet when I got on it. I wasn't sure which way the clouds were going. Some were dark, black clouds. And then I could see a little bit the other direction. It looked clear towards the Buddhist center. So it gave me a sense of clouds lifting as I came. I hope that works as an experience for us all. We're going to release our hands from behind the head and raise the leg that's closest to me. And just dorsi and plantar flex, it's called. Pointing your toe is plantar flexion. Pushing your heel is dorsiflexion. Going back and forth between the two is obviously facilitated by muscles. And we can feel that those muscles are in the leg. So pulling the heel is the calf muscle contracting. Pulling the toes back is the tibialis anteriors on the front of the leg. But it goes further. You can feel a stretch when you push your heel up that goes right the way through the back of the thigh too. And that, of course, begins to hydrate some of the body's tissue. Most of the tissue comes under the category of fascia. Fascia is just a combination of elastin and collagen that makes up the main structures of the muscles and the supportive structures around the organs and the supportive structures near to the skin. We're going to turn the heel in, toes out, cross that leg over the other one, and take a breath or 2. Now, there's 2 choices here that probably most of us will take the choice quite rightly through the leg, and you can then either interlace around your far shin or back thigh. I've taken very recently, to not going through the leg, but to going above the leg. It gives it a little bit more strength, but it often doesn't need any more strength. Sometimes we think, oh, more strength is better, but you wouldn't think that ad infinitum, for example, with your coffee. You know, oh, I like a nice strong coffee. I'll just add the whole bag into my cup. It would be too much. So in yoga, we're mindful not to take too much. Too much doesn't mean better and better. Unfortunately, in our society, we're encouraged to think more and more is better and better a little bit. You know, it's got the iPhone, whatever, 11. That's the one I've got, actually. And I've got the 10, but that one's a bit broken. It keeps overheating. But I should have the newest one, which is the iPhone, whatever, 2,994. So, you know, we're just encouraged, aren't we, to keep like more and more. And that can come into yoga, but you know, the right amount is what we need of coffee, of whatever. Right? So the right amount is not too little. No one likes a weak coffee. Or do they? Maybe they do. Americans do, I think. And nobody likes an overly strong coffee that you can stand your spoon in. So here you've got to get something that's rich enough. The sensation's got to be rich enough to invite you to breathe more deeply. It keeps saying, go on, take a deeper breath. So if it's too weak, you know, if you're not pulling enough or rolling to a different position where you get that stronger sensation, then it won't make that request. But if it's too strong, then you sort of get trapped underneath it, you know. I always quite liked the film A Fish Called Wonder, which was a sort of spin-off from Monty Python. And I think this guy is always trying to kill this little old lady. I can't remember why. But at one point, he pushes a piano. It's Michael Palin, I think. Pushes a piano off a building to try and kill her. And he loves animals, this guy. And unfortunately, he kills her chihuahua instead. But the point is, I always visualize the piano sort of squashing someone. That being too much in a pose. You can't get up from underneath it. You can't breathe properly because you're sort of squashed. Don't know why I always visualize that. Anyway, release nice and easy when you're ready. We're going to do the second leg in a moment. So let's put the feet on the floor. Love to hear you take a deep breath in and out. You know, really letting yourself have some deep, deep, deep releases through the breath. Very natural. You know, uncontrived. And then when we're ready, up comes the other leg, of course. And similarly, we're going to dorsii and plantar flex the foot, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You can add circling the foot. I find that starts to reach into the plantar fascia, which is the fascia on the plantar part of the body, the foot, the sole of the foot. So that's quite nice to do, I think. And you do it in a way that's not just about the foot, but about the muscles further up as well. And trying to see if you can feel it even through your thigh muscles. And that means a stretch on the back when you push the heel out. And you might even sense, if you're relaxed enough, you might even sense that when you push your heel out, that pull can go all the way to the sitting bones because the hamstrings, the back of the thighs attached there. When you're ready, heel in, toes out, cross that leg over the other. You don't need my big lecture about what is enough this time because I gave it to you on the other side. But too little is too little, too much is too much. You've got to get the right amount of intensity. And we do need intensity to some extent because that's what imprints into the nerves that are holding all sorts of assumptions and presumptions. You know, our parents have got their own conditioning that they got from their parents, and, you know, and then that passes into us, and then that meets all the things we meet in our lives and gets adapted and subtly changed. But, you know, it's caused by everything, and it's in the nerves, you know. And it makes assumptions, the nerves make assumptions and presumptions. And the things that have happened to us in our lives condition more assumptions and presumptions. But if something intense enough comes along, what we're habituated to gets challenged. So just roll it. See if you can find a sensation that is rich enough that you can't think about anything else while you're feeling it. It's too rich to think about anything else. Okay, nice and easy. Release, feet onto the floor, hands behind the head again. Breathe through your nose. So just laying on your back, take a few deep breaths like that. Breathing through your nose. We're going to make ourselves into a little ball. So we're going to lift the feet up. We're going to lift the head up. No yanking on the neck for this. This has to be abdominal entirely. So we're going to see if we can attempt to lift up the pelvis as well. It might not actually lift. We don't have to have our fingers interlaced, by the way, necessarily, unless it's comfortable. We can have them released from that. We can have them anywhere that makes our neck feel more comfortable. We can even change position. So here we're attempting to lift the pelvis, but even if it doesn't actually lift, the attempt will stimulate the muscles quite dynamically and challenge the sort of modus operandi that they normally follow. Bring the head back down and the feet back down. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out like a sigh. Let's have 3 of those. A real sense of surrender on the exhale. Real strong sense of surrender on the exhale. And seeing is 3 is a magic number. Can't remember who sung that, but there was a band that did, and I agree with them. We're going to do the same thing again. So we're going to lift up. Again, I'm going to remind us that we don't want to make the neck feel undue strain. So personally, I often change my hand position. Sometimes I take it to the neck. Sometimes I take it from the neck to the skull. And sometimes I move it between those places. So it's my abdominals, not my neck that's working. Della Soul, that's it. They were great, weren't they? That was a great song. Down we come. No more, no less, I think was one of the lyrics. 3 is a magic number. So anyone who knows that song, you can be joyfully singing it while we prepare for number 3, the pose. There's deep, deep breaths. I enjoyed all that sort of, I'm going to call it conscious soul music of the early 90s, was it? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's lift the feet, lift the head. We've got one more because no more, no less. 3 is the magic number. And again, really do what you can to get your pelvis off the floor. It takes a lot of abdominal flexion, curling yourself into a ball, but we're not making the neck tight. Keeping the jaw soft, the eyes soft, breathing deep. Okay, well done. Down you come, feet down, head down, deep breaths, plural, staying on your back. I'm just going to swap that rattly window for a non-rattly window. Got a bit of a squeaky one today. So deep breaths, natural breaths, which is the squeaky one. Deep natural breaths. Now raise the leg that's closest to me and interlace your fingers behind the thigh, right? So we're not actually on the back of the knee, that soft skin, it's quite tender, the skin on the back of the knee. We're just below that. And we're going to do 3 things simultaneously. And one is press the hands into the thigh. The other is press the thigh into the hands. So there's a sort of checkmate, you could say. And at the same time, and very, very importantly, breathing freely. Now, breathing freely means sort of breathing in a way that's relaxed. Breathing in the way that you do when you've come away from something you were worried about, like a family event or a job interview or a first date or a photo shoot. I don't know if anyone has photo shoots. I don't, but maybe people do. What, whatever it is, something you were like not sure about, and then it went okay, and then it's finished. You'll be like, maybe you kind of walk to the local park and it's done, and you're done for the day, and it went really well, and you're the family event, the job interview, the first date, it went really well. And you're relaxed. So it's that kind of breath, like a relief. We breathe like we're relieved. And if you get those three things together, hands into the thigh, thigh into the hands, and breathing like you're relieved, then energy in the form of heat, tingling, or just awareness will start to arise in the front of your thigh or the front of your leg somewhere else, like the kneecap or the top of the shin, or all three places. One or, somewhere along the front of the thigh. Tingling, heat, just a bit more awareness. And as soon as you feel it, whatever it manifests as, we imagine that we could draw it up like a current was flowing through it towards the pelvis. And that current keeps reiterating. It's like the tide coming in. It's wave after wave of the tide coming in, moving up towards the pelvis. And every time a new wave of influence passes through the leg, it picks up a few more muscle fibers. And so the front of the leg gets increasingly integrated. The back of the leg, as a result, this is basic physiology, as a result, releases more and more. But it doesn't happen without the breath being as I've described. That's the bit that really sometimes we can think is, can take or leave, but that's the key ingredient, makes it all come together. The word yoga means integration, so that's what we're feeling at beginning and continuing through the front thigh integration. Now, I love that so much that I could forget myself and just keep doing it, but we've got the other leg to do, so we better come down. We're going to take 2 or 3 or 4 deep breaths. It's only an hour. These early morning sessions are only an hour to enable people to do them before work or whatever things people do, photo shoots, first dates. We're going to raise up the other leg when we're ready. Interlace your fingers around the back of the thigh. And remember, it's only 3 things to do, but you've got to do them all together. Thigh into hands, hands into the thigh, and free or relaxed breathing, like, relief, a breath of relief. Like everything's very relaxing. Something, a scenario, it's quite confessional, I suppose, that I sometimes like to imagine is, you get in, and if you live with someone else, there's a note on the table. It says something like, "Oh, I've gone out. I'll be out for about 5 hours. I love you," says on it, even if it's just your flatmate, bit of a surprise, but anyway, there it is. I love you. And, made some nice food as well for you. It's in the fridge. And you think, oh, great, you get this sort of 5 bonus hours of just being, relaxed and on your own. No one to be, no duties. It's like a little free lunch pass, as it were. That's the kind of relaxing scenario. For me, I'd probably pick up my guitar. So, something equivalent to that, release. And then those 2 other actions, and then the energy coming somewhere, perhaps on the top of the shin, perhaps inside the knee, perhaps in the thigh. And then this current, it just keeps sending a repeated upward current through your leg, Goes up, and then you send another one, like another wave after wave after wave after wave. And each time one of those new waves pass through, it picks up another aspect, another muscle fiber. And that integrity can go on, and it just builds up tone in your front thighs. And that releases your back thighs. As I say, it's so good for me. I love it. I could just keep going on that. I find it very meditative. But we're not going to. We're going to bring that leg down, and we're going to roll over when we're ready. We're going to roll right over and turn our heads to face the midline of the room, in the room. And we're going to bring ourselves onto our forearms, which gives our backs a little stretch, which is very, very good for the back to open anteriorly. And it's quite intuitive, I think, to want to move, because that massages the muscles. So if you feel any intuitive movement on the pelvis, just moving side to side in ways that help you release your back. I think also some traction, that is pulling on the mat, combined with movement, can really get those lower back muscles mobilized and long. And it also can release any back pressure that we might feel as it pulls one vertebrae off the other. So it's pubis on the floor, dragging on the mat, maybe moving side to side, trying to get some stretch going on through your tummy. And especially, I don't know if you can imagine or not, your vertebrae, the bones of the back, one above the other, and in between each one, there's a disc. And if you pull the one above, the one below, as it were, and keep doing that up the back, you pull a bit more space for the discs. Just imagine you pulling one bone away from the other, all the way up the back, particularly the lower back, making space for the discs. And the more you do that, the happier your back will be, and the healthier it will be long term. Now from here, we're going to tuck the toes under. The elbows, by the way, should be a little forwards of the shoulders. We're going to lift up the pelvis and take the feet about hip width apart, allow movement. Movement shares the load and helps to hydrate. So movement might be pushing the heels backwards and forwards, might be combining that with other movements like moving left or right with the pelvis, but we're just moving to share the load. We're going to then step out and step in with each foot 3 times, keeping calm, no more, no less. 3 is the magic number. With each leg. And then from there, knees forwards when you've done your 3, and sit up kneeling, one hand on top of the other, breathing through the nose. If your knees are tight kneeling, put a block between your heels and buttocks. Just gives a bit more space for the knees. And then rest one hand, as I say, on top of the other, sit up nice and tall, breathe through your nose, chest is up, nasal breathing because it hydrates, it filters, it warms, and it slows the incoming breath. So those are 4 ticks. It filters, it warms, it hydrates, and it slows the incoming breath. It warms and it hydrates because of the extra blood vessels in the nose. Everyone knows they've got more blood vessels in the nose, especially from being a kid, when kids seem to have a million nosebleeds. I don't know why. There's a lot of blood vessels in the nose. So that contributes to the warming effect. There's also a mucus lining that contributes to the hydration effect. There are also multiple hairs, and they add to the filtering effect. And then the breath has to pass through the sinuses, which are a sort of little, mild maze. And so it has to hit these little walls. So that slows the breath. On the way out, none of the above except slowing the breath, but that's beneficial if you breathe through your nose. So, meaning it's particularly useful to you breathe nasally on the way in, but it's also useful if you can do it on the way out. Rolling on your shins can be pleasant because it massages your calf muscles, it massages the muscles on your shins, Massage means movement. Movement equals hydration. It's just what it does. Now from here, we're going to come forwards to our fingertips and we're going to tuck the toes under. And that, for some people, is very, 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 very strong for the foot arches. So you can take it more easy by being forwards like this. For some people with the toes tucked under, it's easy. So we won't be long. If it's very, very hard, it's good that you're here because they really need it, the plantar fascia. And it's usually easy to tell when it's hard for people because we do a little face. We're going to interlace the fingers, stretch the arms and raise the arms up. We're not going to stay too long because I know it's hard for some people. It's just the way it is. It divides about 50-50. 50% of people are like, this is hell. And the other 50% are like, it's fine. And that's just the way it goes. Okay, because of the 50% that think it's a living hell, we're going to come out because of feelings of compassion that I'm feeling. And then we're going to come forwards to our hands, take our feet backwards. We're going to come into the downward facing dog, which I know you've heard of. One of the keys to the downward facing dog is firstly getting your hands to really mesh into the mat. So I like to sort of reiterate, like padding my hands a bit like a cat pads its paws. So every time I pad my hand, I try and feel that the molecules of my hand are meshing in more deeply with the molecules of the mat. And if you get really deep connection with your palms and the mat, then when you push, you get much better feedback, much better spring back up through your arms, through your back. And you can help that by moving your pelvis or bending your knees. Sometimes the hamstring muscles are pretty tight, so you can bend the knees and extend them again. Remember, movement hydrates the body. So if it feels unhydrated, it feels stiff and sort of sticky, then move in a variety of ways to bring it to life, as it were. From here, we're going to raise one leg. Let's say the one closest to me. And you can play with that any way you want. I quite like lifting the heel of the lower leg, but you can also bend the top leg, extend it. Just follow your own intuition, what feels most releasing for your breath. You can do anything, actually. Turn in, turn out, bend the knee, extend the knee. You can do anything. And then when you're ready, we're going to sweep the foot forwards into the place of the hand. Now that might take 2 or 3 or 4 sweeps, or you might do it in one big sweep. It comes forwards into the place of the hand, and then your knee is lightly on the floor behind you, but you can lift it and land it and move it. And that starts to stretch the tissue around the top of your leg. So that's where the rectus femoris connects in. If your heel is not coming down, take your back knee further back until the heel does. And then, as I say, backwards, forwards, you can lift it up. You can bring it down again. You can play with that a bit. So you're beginning to hydrate this new area of tissue that we haven't worked into much yet. Eventually, we are going to bring the back knee back onto the floor behind the pelvis, not underneath it, but behind it. Some people are better off with the toes tucked under, some with the toes pointing back. It's up to you to discover. And then we're going to climb up on our front leg, pushing into the leg with our hands, breathing through our noses if we can. There is an instinct, natural and good instinct, to breathe deep into these stretches. That you want to go with that entirely. There's an instinct, I think, as well, to lightly tone your tummy so that as you push your hands and your ribs lift, the toned tummy means the pelvis gets pulled along as well and gets loosened up. We're going to raise the arms as well if you want. Keep that tummy toned and loose at the same time. So the tone is not tight. It's toned, but there's the ability within that tone to adapt to the changing moments. There's an aliveness to the tone rather than a sort of, we can say we're not alive when we're really binary, that's bad, that's good. We're not alive when we're binary like that. We want to be aware of nuance. Coming back down when you're ready. Coming back to hands and knees, and then back to downward facing dog. Good job, good job. Don't hold the breath. See if you can get those palms meshed in. That's the first priority. It's like the foundation, you know, like if you build a house, you want to make sure the foundation is really good first. So that's your foundation, your palms really, really meshed into the mat. And then when you push into your hands, the energy rebounds up through your arms. You want to encourage that through your body, through your lower back. You can, as I mentioned before, you can bend and extend. You can move your pelvis. All the movements can help to hydrate the body intuitively. The right actions should conduce to greater absorption, greater calm, greater intuition, the diminishing of doubt. When you're doing the pose right, there's no doubts anymore because you're feeling it. You know, you don't have to worry. It's like, oh, I went to one yoga teacher and they said this, I went to another, they said that. It doesn't affect you anymore. You don't feel doubt. Keep your feet fairly close and raise your other leg to the one you raised before. And similarly, we're going to bend and extend. Yeah, great. That's it. You got it. Keep the movement backwards still. You can do things like raising your heel. I don't, you know, I only know really that works for some. I don't know if it works for everyone. And you can, as I say, play with the top leg. I quite like to externally rotate the whole body with the leg and then turn it back in. I like to do that a few times. So it's a really good stretch. When you're ready, we're going to bend the knee and sweep the foot forwards. It might be 2 or 3 sweeps, or it might be one big sweep. And land the back knee behind the pelvis. Breathe through your nose if you can. Don't hold the breath. Lift and land the back knee several times with an intention to create length and stretch all the way around the top of the leg. So you imagine that you can feel the stretch is coming from the pelvis and you're pulling back like, gently pulling hair into a hair tie. You're sort of gently pulling back the variety of fibres comparable to the hairs being gently pulled back, ready to put them in a hair tie. So similarly here. And then we're going to bring the hands up onto the leg. Breathe through your nose if you can. Focus on the stretch of the groin and realize that the body and the breath are the same thing. You want to release the body, you got to release the breath while aware of a certain part of the body. So here the groin, the top of the thigh, and then follow through with the arms. This is called Anjaneyasana, the name of the pose, in case you want to know. Make sure your neck feels relaxed, that your eyes mirror the right attitude, which is interested, investigative, and spacious. Interested, investigative, and spacious. Okay, coming back down. When you're ready, back to your down face dog, because 3 is a magic number. Perhaps I'll stop saying that eventually. Get those palms deeply woven into the mat. Don't hold the breath. Feel free to move your pelvis any way that works. We're going to bring our shoulders forwards. Now, if there's any problems with the wrists, that can feel difficult. Sometimes putting pressure into a difficult wrist is good for it. I've got one wrist that I had a motorcycle accident, I don't know how long ago, 12 years ago, that injured the wrist. And so that wrist feels painful. But if I put pressure on it in the right way, it really helps. But sometimes you just can't. So you can do the same pose on your forearms if you need to. Similarly, with the next pose, where you hover the body above the floor, it's called Chaturanga Dandasana. It's very popular with no one. We're going to push up from there for Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. It's head up dog. You can have your toes either tucked under or pointing back. It's still investigative. We're moving in ways that we can work with the body exactly how we find it, not how we think it should be or how it once was. but exactly how we find it. Back to our Adho Mukha Svanasana. Oh, that's 4. I've gone past the magic number. And then we're going to get our feet in between our hands somehow. So you can step them, walk them, jump them, whatever you want. Get your feet between your hands any way you can. Our hands are going to be flat on the floor, which means bending the knees or breaking the back. The former is definitely the better. But occasionally, some people have got very, very short legs compared to their torsos that are very, very long. And if that's the case, there are some people who could, perhaps through raising their heels, eventually have the legs straighter and a peaceful back. But most of us will need bent knees to have a peaceful back. And seeing as the back is the central axis of the whole body, we definitely want it to be peaceful. So most of us got bent knees, hands flat. Some of us might be playing with the movement of the heels and the feet to massage through the legs so that we can fold the back without making it tense and have the legs straight. But this is by far less common that that's going to be possible. So no back dullness, aching or pain, please. We're going to bend the ankles, knees, and hips. We're going to raise the arms as if we're skiing. Well, what I think of, like when I think of people skiing, I've never actually been skiing, so I could be wrong, but I've seen it on the television set. so when people go skiing, sometimes they want to go really fast, like Eddie the Eagle, for example. Then you can add some bouncing. He's literally the only skier I know of. Arms forwards and up when you're ready and breathing through your nose. Eddie the Eagle. What a guy. So you can move left, you can move right, you can bounce it a little. And the bouncing is there to stop it locking, just to stop it locking. We're going to turn towards me and bring one hand down and the other hand on your sacrum. Again, we can move to stop it locking and just breathing easy, jaw soft, eyes soft, brain soft. Turn the other way, so you're turning away from me, or just the other way, whichever way you turn. Again, stopping it locking, breathing easy. Return to center with both fingers on the floor. Raise your arms again like you're skiing really fast, aerodynamically. Because people have told me who have been skiing that there are little bumps. You can add the little bumps if you want, as if you're going over little undulations in the snow. It's a much safer and cheaper way of going skiing this way. Arms forwards and up again. Stand up all the way. Take a big circle with your arms. Bring your hands to your heart center in a prayer position and take a deep breath. Or 3 or 4. Really the breath, so lovely to let it out. And it changes everything about your day when you let yourself breathe. Everything about the day is different from here on in. Jaw soft, eyes soft, breathing easy. So this is called Tadasana Namaskara. Namaskara means bowing action. Namas is the bowing, kara is the action. We're going to raise the heel of the foot that's furthest away from me. We're going to lift the foot right up off the floor, but really concentrating on the standing leg. So we're raising up further and further that foot and leg, right up towards our hands. And once we can reach the shin, that's what we do. And we see if we can pull it up a little bit more. We're not holding the breath at all. We're keeping our heads in an alignment that makes the upper back not feel tight as well. And we're breathing through our nose. And we're feeling the excitement of balance. So we've got the potential that we could fall. That makes us feel very, very excited. Same sort of thrills that one might get at Thorpe Park or Alton Towers, but without the queues and without the terrible, terrible food. Okay, coming down nice and easy when you're ready. Breathing easy. That's about as much thrill as I want, actually. I don't need Alton Towers or want Alton Towers. Raise up the other leg. When you're ready, similarly, keep it drawing up. I think it's useful to focus as well on the standing leg, because there's a relationship between pressing the foot of the standing leg and lifting your raised leg. So pressing and lifting, pressing and lifting. Breathing deep, pressing and lifting. And it's also good, practice of keeping a good sense of humor as well. If you lose balance, notice if you automatically tut. And, that's kind of funny to notice if we're a tutter. So always being very, very kind, good-humored, spacious. It's just a ride, Bill Hicks once said. Okay, down you come. When you're ready, turn around, hands on your hips, feet facing forwards. Oh yeah, slips the other way, doesn't it? You've been slipping around. Left toes in, right foot and leg out on the ball of the foot. Finish off the turn on the heel to arch alignment. Just check that the back toes are turned in. And then stretch your arms when you're ready. You feel your ribs lift up. Now raise your lead arm. Good. Inhale, exhale. It's the pelvis that moves, so it's the hamstrings that stretch. So bringing some tone to the quadriceps, which takes time and investigation, is very, very useful. Hand comes to the shin, maybe to the floor if you've got short legs and long arms. Breathing through your nose, bottom ribs forwards. Jaw soft. Constant aliveness, investigating how we can incorporate more of the body more holistically. And by drawing more of the body into the pose, you draw it away from being controlled by assumptions and presumptions and biases and habit patterns. And so that the goal of yoga really is to recruit every single fiber. And in so doing, you purge the body of all these assumptions that have come through our society, from our very particular family upbringing, in a very particular location. Inhaling, coming up calmly. Hands on the hips, feet face forwards, deep breaths, plural. Turning your back toes in when you're ready, front foot and leg out on the ball of the foot, finish off the turn on the heel. You should have heel to arch. What we don't want is heel to heel. That's the one thing that we don't want in this. Heel to arch is fine, even heel to toes is fine, but not heel to heel. Raise your arms, lift your ribs, raise your lead arm, inhale, exhale. Good job. Very good, yeah, looks good. And then bottom ribs forwards. Don't hold your breath. There's a little bit of light tone on the tummy. When I use the word light, it means that it's sort of adaptable. It's not like locked, it's adaptable. So light tone is this kind of, yes, there's tone, it's pulling gently, but it's at the same time, it's not locked. So the other movements of the body, it can adapt to. So adaptability. So when people sometimes say to me, oh, I'd love to do yoga, but I'm not flexible enough. Well, that would be true if they were talking about their minds. But of course, you learn to have a flexible mind in yoga, and that's what it's about. Inhale, come on up. Well done. Hands on the hips, feet facing forwards. Now, we are going to bring our hands to the floor in a moment, but if you feel like when you forward fold, you start curling over, then it's better to use blocks. Much better to use, because we want this to stay open. So if you're not sure, get blocks, because you can always get rid of them. It's much easier to get rid of blocks in the middle of a pose than it is to get them in the middle of a pose. So you put a couple of blocks there, unless you know for sure that this whole area will stay open when you forward fold. We're going to spread out the little toes while turning the toes in a little bit. Yeah, very good. Spreading out the little toes is a life mission. And, it's a life mission for me. although you're pretty good at it pretty early. Second yoga class and you're already good. Yeah, you've got little toe skills. It's impressive. Yeah, thank you for bringing them. Stretch and lift up. On the inhale, exhale, hinge, fold, down to your blocks. So when I first started yoga, I really found it difficult to spread out my little toes, unlike Matt, who's got the gift. So I used to go down to Brighton Beach and put pebbles between my toes. And I did that for a very, very long time. And still now, it's, that was 34 years ago, which is confusing because I think I thought I was 34. Oh dear. Anyway, so that was 34 years ago. And I'm still doing it, because it's about calmness, I think, getting those little toes to extend. You kind of have to get a certain kind of calmness. Anyway, we've got the fingertips on the blocks or perhaps the floor, but we're keeping the spine open. And we're balancing by moving the feet across the left and right, just sort of swaying left and right with the pelvis and the feet. We can feel the balance between the outer foot and the inner foot. And if you push one way, you get too much stretch on the outer foot and a collapsing in the inner. You push the other way, you get the same the other way. So what we want is balance right in the middle of the heels, whilst feeling the outer ankles very, very gently, very, very gently drawing gently in, and the inner ankles very, very gently drawing up. It's all very subtle. I've been doing it a long time, and I find it a really interesting challenge still. Very interesting. Sometimes the lower back dips down like a concave in this pose, and that indicates that the hamstrings have released the pelvis quite a lot. And if the lower back dips and dips and dips, it can feel a bit tight. This is only sometimes. It might not be happening to most of us, but sometimes, if it ever does, then the way to release tightness due to a dipping lower back is to go a little lower. So that's the only reason we would take the pose lower, not because lower is better. So there's a basement room here, and it's really nice actually, but it's not better than this top room. They're both nice. So lower isn't better. Lower is just lower. But it is better if it releases your lower back. But it's worse if it compresses your back or tummy. So it's for whom and when. Okay, back to fingertips. When you're ready, walk your feet a little bit closer in. Come as high as you can on your blocks or the floor. And then lead with the chest to come up. Walk your feet towards each other. Bring yourself down onto your back. If you've got a couple of these purple blocks, or other colors are just as useful. The color isn't the important thing, but the shape is. If you've got a couple of these bad boys, then you put them together long side to long side. You can even have a little gap between them, it's fine. Long side to long side. And then you fold your mat over the top and you cross your legs on them. From there, we take our fingers on the floor behind us. We're going to scoot the buttocks under towards the heels, down to the elbows, scoot under again. Do as many of those scoot unders as you can, and then lay yourself down. Arm positions, there are several that work just fine, and one of them is the hands on the ribs. The other is arms out to the side. My favorite is arms over the head, but sometimes you've got to really move your shoulder blades to make that happen, and to do that, you've got to move your arms, because the arm movement is quite unusual in that the arm moves in a little dish within the shoulder blades, the glenoid fossa, but the shoulder blade itself can move as well. So you can get double movement by moving the shoulder blade, turning that, pulling it out from the bottom inner edge by moving your arms. And then, of course, that makes the movement of the arm within the shoulder blade even more effective, more easy. Either way, we're going to take 4 deep breaths with a focus on the exhale. And sometimes it feels like it's really nice if you accidentally take 5, well, why not? Treat yourself. Or even 6. Okay, change the cross of your legs when you're ready. So the other one goes in front. I don't know if this is the case for you, but for me, I quite find it useful to bring my hands then to the top of my pelvis, just underneath the bony crest, where the buttock flesh begins, and just tuck under with my hands. That makes my lower back feel longer. I like that feeling. And then if you did that and you wanted to stretch your arms over your head, you could get further movement of the shoulder blades. We know movement is hydration. And then we're going to take, again, when we feel ready, 4 or 5 or 6, really at least 4 deep breaths. So letting go, really giving, really breathing. It's a beautiful practice, yoga. It's really about letting go, about releasing, about opening the tight fist into an open hand. Changes your life, actually. Changes everything. Bring your arms forwards towards you. If you just stretch them over, bring your legs back together, feet back together. A little hug for your legs now, and a little roll about to give that little hug a little bit more efficacy. So just rolling. Rolling left, rolling right. Trying to find some really good moments. And then when you feel ready, you can release your feet back down. Take another couple of deep breaths. Just let everything relax. And we can either roll onto our side to adjust our mat and blocks, in other words, to remove the mat and blocks, or if you're skilled with your feet, you might be able to do it with the feet. If you're a bit chilly, you can throw a blanket over yourself. I can bring some round for anyone who's in the room. I can't bring any round to Zoomers, unfortunately. We're going to extend the legs. We're going to close the eyes. We're going to breathe through the nose. And there's just really one word that summarizes the way this pose is. And that word is melting. melting. We're going to feel into the body, although it's nice to lay longer. I try not to be tardy with the end of this class because I know it's particularly important that people can trust that it ends on time. They can get away on time. So we're going to move into the fingers and the toes, just investigatively moving. And then that will probably lead to feeling ready to take some stretches that are natural. You might rub your eyes or run a hand through your hair. And then finally, bending the legs, placing the feet on the floor. If you scoot the buttocks under and take a deep breath, the lower back will really release very nicely. And then we can roll onto our side, facing away from this side of the room and lay as comfortably as you can on your side. And rolling again in your own time. So you lay comfortably on the other side without any rush. And because only thinking of ourselves makes ourselves very unhappy and sad, but if we expand our awareness and think of others as well as ourselves, we feel happy and integrated. When we come up from the side now, let's come up from the side. We're going to face the shrine. We're going to bring our hands together at the heart. And we're just going to do a simple wish. And if you agree with this simple wish, you just say Om, which just means in Sanskrit, which is one of the languages of yoga, I agree. May any benefit that we've gained interacting in this way be shared for the alleviation of the suffering of any and all people. Om. I'm going to add people and animals. Thanks so much for your time. It's really, really nice to see you and to re-see you and to see you and to see you and to see you and to see you on Zoom as well. I hope you enjoyed my marvelous red short look. Thanks for your time. Lovely to see you. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you.